Oh, well, hello everyone. Welcome to the Career Hub. And today we're going to be talking about build your resume, which is really important. My name is Omar Barberena, and I'm one of the employment development specialists here at Downtown Career Hub. And with me, I have my colleague.
Hi, Alyssa Stocking. I'm also an employment development specialist in the Career Hub. I'm glad that you're tuning in today.
All right, so what we're going to be covering today, we're going to cover, well, obviously, what is a resume, the formats of a resume, key components of a resume, and we're going to also be providing you with samples, do's and don'ts of a resume, and some additional tips that we have for you.
So let's start off with the very basic question. What is a resume? So it's an opportunity to provide a snapshot of what you are able to offer a potential employer. So it's really your time to shine. You have a very, very short amount of time to capture a recruiter or a hiring manager's attention. So you need to have all of your best stuff right there on the top of your resume.
And this is really, really important, Alisa, because do you know, and most of you might not know, that an employer, or an HR person only takes about 15 to 20 seconds to look at a resume. So for you, like Alisa said, it is your time to shine, to really, really shine and stand out among so many applicants that will be probably sending their resumes for this position. So let's talk about formats. And formats are really important because what we want to be introducing to you today is two types of formats that are most commonly used for employers nowadays. And then we have the chronological format, which is focused on skills gained at each of the job that you have in the past. So we call it chronological because you're going to put the most recent one and so on and so forth. So it also highlights relevant experience. And what are mostly the benefits for this format is that employers tend to prefer these traditional formats because they can actually see your history right off the bat. There's no gap in between. So this will allow the employers to see what experiences that you have right off, and also to see whether you have had any experiences that might be gapping for you. Do you have anything to add to it, Lisa?
I don't think so. I can say, having worked in talent acquisition, it's very easy to follow. Like Omar said, if you're starting with the position that you're in and going back from there, there's no question about, oh, well, when did they do this or where did they do this? So it is a very easy format to follow. So it can be very beneficial to put your resume in this format. But that brings us to the next slide, and that is talking about a skills functional format. So this does have a place as well. Like Omar said, typically talent acquisition, people do prefer the reverse chronological, but there are times where a skills functional format might work better. An example would be, if you're switching careers or, if you have limited experience. For example, if somebody worked, let's say in culinary 30 years ago, they worked in the culinary field, then they switched and they decided to go to accounting for a while. And now they're having a career change and going back to culinary. That might be a time where you would use a skills functional format, because on a resume, you're not going to go back for 30 years. But if you do a skills functional format, you can highlight your culinary skills in some bucket areas that really show what you've done in that field previously. So that could be a potential example of when you might use a skills functional format. It's not as focused on the actual jobs and the chronological order in which you did them. You're thinking about things like, oh, I had 5 jobs that were in customer service. Well, I'm going to think about those 5 jobs and I'm going to pull out all of the customer service skills that I have. And I'm going to make a bullet list with everything that I have in the area of customer service. Then maybe another skill area would be organizational skills. I'm going to think about those 5 jobs I was in previously, and I'm going to put, what did I do as far as organizational skills? And I'm going to list that out as well. So that's kind of how that particular resume would be set up. Omar, did you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, actually, I would say also that this is good for, I would say, a lot of students who have not had a lot of experience. Okay, because this kind of experiences that you develop, is skill functional. These are skills that you are developing from the classrooms, like Elisa said, like clerical, customer service, working as a team, it's sort of things that you can actually put it, as opposed to just not living a way, a wide gap of jobs. So, it will help you determine that, you have some skills that you have developed, and that's why we call it the functional skill format.
Yes.
Okay, we have some really important components that you must put in the resume. Okay, remember we talked about that it is your time to shine, but you have to have some key components. First of all, well, you got to start with a strong professional summary. Okay, you can use some keywords that you can actually pick out of our package that we're going to be presenting to you. But you start with a professional summary first, and you got to be specific. You feature your education right below it, and if you are graduated, you can put your recent graduation date, or if you are planning on graduating, let's say for a next semester, you can put, expected graduation date. This component too that you have to have highlights the skills that match the job description. List the languages abilities and list technical skills and certification. What is important about that, and Elisa can add to it as well, is that you gotta look at the job description. That is a good strategy. Wouldn't you say that, Elisa?
Absolutely, Omar. That's a great point to make, because you really have to. You don't need to reinvent the wheel every time you make a new resume, but it should show without doubt that, hey, I have the skills needed for your particular job. You want to paint the picture for that recruiter or hiring manager to let them know I can, bring to the table what you need in a candidate. And a great way to identify those things is, again, by looking at that job description and incorporating some of those keywords, both into the professional summary, but also into that skills section, because that's really prime real estate on your resume. That top part where you have the professional summary and the skills section, that's what's going to capture the reader's attention. So it's extremely important. Even by changing out a few keywords, it'll make you get noticed. Another thing is that sometimes it's a computer system that's actually reviewing your resume rather than a person, and they're scanning for those keywords. So if you don't have some of those keywords in there, you might get passed over for an interview. So that's another reason it's really important.
Yeah, and remember how long I said that an HR or a hiring manager might look at a resume? Right, 10 to 15 seconds. That's how long. Or even less sometimes. Like Elisa said, because they have those matching system, they just, none of the words, the keywords that you're picking out from your actual job posting matches, they just toss it out. Okay.
Yep.
So
exactly. All right, so continuing on here, a couple other things that you're typically going to be highlighting here on your resume. So of course, your experience section. This is going to look a little bit different for everybody. For example, if you're a healthcare student, and we'll get to that in the next bullet point, but your clinical experience, if you work, if you're going to school to become a registered nurse, your clinical experience is likely the most relevant experience that you have in your field. So that should be the first, thing that appears in that experience section, is the clinical experience. And then going on to some other jobs that, would be, maybe still related in healthcare that you've done. So you want to make sure that you are, highlighting the transferable skills. And by transferable skills, we're talking about things that would be, even if, let's say you worked as a stocker at Walmart, what things in that job at Walmart would still be valuable in a potential nursing role? So maybe you had to interact with customers and so forth. You'll have to interact with patients. So you want to be talking about, providing exceptional customer service, because that would still translate into a nursing role. You always want to start your experience section with action verbs. So, managed is one, you could say delegated, organized, some strong word that's going to start off each bullet point. And always think about, if you're still at the position or not. If you're there, you want to use a present tense action verb. If you're no longer there, it would be a past tense action verb. And you want to make sure that you're being consistent. Another great thing that you can do is try and quantify. So for example, if I was going for a sales role, I could talk about increased sales 30% over the course of the year. Anytime you can add numbers, it's very impactful, and it really speaks loudly more than a lot of words. Numbers talk. So think about that if you can quantify it all possible, if at all possible. And again, going to that clinical and field experience, it's extremely valuable to try and highlight that as it might be your most relevant experience. Did you have something to add, Omar? It looked like you were about to say something.
I was going to, and before I forget, I'm glad that you asked me, if when you talk about quantifying, it doesn't necessarily have to be numbers like you mentioned, Alyssa, in accounting, but it could be also for, let's say that you train people. Instead of saying, I train individuals, you can say, I train 5 co-workers. So now the employer is going to get that idea. Okay, it's not only a general term, but it's actually specifically 5, 10, or whatever the numbers it might be. So that employer might actually say, okay, this person is good with people. It's
Right.
a good listener, it's a good trainer. Yep.
That's a great point. And even if it's just a project, something very tangible, how you maybe oversaw the implementation of a new system or, something like that, an actual example can also be really powerful on a resume to show what you've done. So other things, and it really depends on everybody's individual situation, but you may be very active volunteering. Maybe you work with Boys and Girls Club. And you do volunteer experience, or you're in a leadership role within a student organization. Those are things that can help you to stand out above other candidates. So anything like that, you always want to highlight and show that you're involved in other things, especially if you review when you're looking at organizations you want to apply to. If they're very committed and engaged in community service and different activities, that will really be powerful if they see, oh, she's doing volunteer experience as well. That might really help you to stand out. So anything, achievements, honors, awards, anything that's going to help you to stand out above another candidate is certainly fair game and should be highlighted on your resume. Anything else, Omar?
And I was going to say that too. I mean, we have at MATC over 20 organizations, that you can join. And that way, then you can, put that in your resume too. Think about everything that you do here at MATC. It could be a good way to enchant, to make your resume even better. The same would be like Alyssa was talking about in the community and clubs experience. You always think about all the stuff that is not going to be helping you as well, but you're helping the community at the same time. But it will help you in your resume as well.
Right. And it can help you to even network, being part of different clubs. You might have a student that you're, in a club with, and they say, oh, at my job, this opening just happened. And then you're the first one to find out about it. So that's another way to network too. And it just could lead to great things. So, get as actively engaged as you can. And then if Jasmine, our colleague here, could just link to the resume packet, we just want to show you what the formats look like a little bit. And this link is also on our website on www.matc.edu/career hub. So you'll be able to find this link under the resume resource area as well. But if you'll go down to page 6, I believe it is, we can take a look at a reverse chronological format.
Yeah, and by the way, this link has a lot of good resources for resume. It's not only what we're telling you, but also others extra stuff that we're not able to tell you here because of timing.
Yep, information on cover letters, thank you letters, just some different examples of things. So we really encourage you to check it out. Also on page 5, there's a really great comprehensive list of action verbs. If you're kind of struggling, feel like you're using the same word over and over again, that's a really nice resource right there as well. But the reverse chronological, as you can see, it starts off like we talked about with that professional summary and then moves into that skills section. This is an accounting example, but you can see very specific things they're highlighting in the skills area. You know, processed accounts receivable, reconciled accounts payable, maintained a general ledger. It's talking about specific things in the realm of accounting that this student could bring to the table to a potential role. So as you can see, the work experience, it's starting with the most recent position, and you can tell that they are still there at that job. It goes January 2010 till present. So this is the reverse chronological, starting with that recent job that you're either in or were at most recently, and then moving backwards in time. And you can see it's talking specifically about the duties that you had within that particular role. So that's kind of how the reverse chronological, and you can see the volunteer experience a little bit further down there, which moves us into the skills functional. If Omar, if you want to talk about that a little bit.
Before you go into that, one thing that I want to point out in addition to what you said, Alisa, is that clearly you can see how easy it is to read this resume. Okay, so it's not cluttered with so many things, but it's down to the point because you have to have a good content, easy to read, and really profound. Remember, you got to stand out. So you can see that, like Alisa said, professional summary, skills. So you're not playing around with the eyes trying to find that information. You know, it's really easy to read and it's right there, which is the first things that HR manager or the hiring manager is going to look at.
I'm glad you brought that up, Omar. I wanted to just add one more thing to that. So as you can see, this doesn't have any like frills and whistles. If you're maybe in a design type, you know, background where you have to have a little bit more of an artistic resume, that might be a different story. But this, you know, it's really just built off of a blank Word document. Sometimes if you use fancy templates and things, it can be very constrictive when you try to update them because you're only allotted a certain amount of space. So it's a lot easier to just really start and left justify everything and start with that blank document. It's just very clean. It makes it easier to, you know, update when you have to do that in the future.
Yeah, and it's a good point to make too, because nowadays employers are using online services, you know, so you download it and send it to them. So when you, like Alisa was talking about format, when you send a formatted resume and you download it to somebody else, it gets all played out. You know, they don't receive it the same way you send it. So when you have it in a simple format that is not formatted, you build it yourself. There's no problem like that. Okay, so let's go on to the skill functionals. Pretty similar from the middle section. You can see that you have the name, you know, the phone number and email. Oh, by the way, too, and we'll be talking about the do's and don'ts. Do not put your address anymore. So because it's not necessarily to do that, you can put your phone number, your email, and that's about all you need. Okay, now when you look at the professional summaries, very similar to the format that we showed you before, the sample. But what varies is the middle section of it when you talk about the experience. As you can see, you have it on cluster: bookkeeping, clerical, customer service. You can see that. So these are the stuff that you had built on the skills that you had from experiences that you have. They're not necessarily back to back year to year because you probably have some gap in between. So you want to do it in a way that is going to be beneficial for you. And you can see at the bottom, you can actually do your employment history. That is when the employer is going to see clearly that, well, you probably have some gaps, and that's your opportunity for you to actually explain that when you have your interview. Do you have anything to add to it, Alisa?
Yes, I was just going to say too, like you can see under the experience section, they've categorized their skills. So in those 4 jobs listed below, they probably had bookkeeping experience. So rather than listing each job and what experience they have with bookkeeping from each job, they've kind of clustered all of their bookkeeping skills into that one category. Same thing with clerical. They've identified clerical as another area that they may have had experience with in those 4 previous jobs. So they made a category called clerical, and on with customer service as well. So it's still highlighting the skills that they've gained in those previous roles, but just in a little bit of a different format.
Yep. And like we said before, this is already in our website, so you can easily go to it and have it printed out or come to us anyways. So what we're going to talk about now is what do's and, oh, there we go. Before we do that, I mean, we're showing you where you can actually find it. So you go into the Career Hub, find jobs, career readiness, and there you go. You just click of a button, and then you find the resources, and then you can find this packet for you. It's a really good package of information that you can actually get for you really easily. Awesome. So, excuse me. Let's go back to what are the things that in a summary stuff that you should do in a resume. Make sure, like the professional summary says, be specific. Just don't be a general term. Looking for something to work with for a general company. We mentioned at the beginning, you know, be specific. So if you know that this is the name of the position that you are applying for, well, put it there. That's what you're looking for. And you're looking for to work in that particular company. So you put it there. Also, really important, be consistent. And what I mean consistent, we got to be consistent throughout. You know, if you use one specific font, if you use one specific things like bullet points, so you use bullet points throughout. You know, don't play around with different fonts, different sizes, because then that confuses the reader and it will just be tossed out. They just put it in the shredder. You know, we talked about quantifying when possible, and we gave you some examples of that. Begin with phrases with action verbs and the past tense for past jobs: developed, initiated, conducted, coordinated, and so on and so forth. And you can find in that packet many, many other things that you can put in there. Okay. Alisa, you want to continue on the other ones because I'm running out of breath right now.
Sure. Yes. So, and you know, like Omar said, check for spelling and grammatical errors. That's why it's so important that you have there's somebody else review it, somebody here in the Career Hub review it. It always can help to have a second set of eyes on a resume, because something you might, since you're so ingrained in doing your own resume, sometimes your eyes just read over mistakes. So that's where it can be really, really helpful to have that second set of eyes before you go start applying to jobs. So, you know, another really important thing is you want to paint yourself in the best possible light. However, you need to be honest. You don't want to, you know, inflate your skills so much that you end up getting a job and then they say, oh, great, I'm so glad that you can, you know, weld, and, you know, we'd like you to make this right off the bat on your first day. And then you've absolutely no idea what you're doing. So, you know, you need to be honest and, you know, of course, highlight your skills and what you can bring to the table, but be realistic as well.
Yeah, because that will come back to you and hunt you. You know, especially when they ask you, like Elisa said, and then, okay, tell us about what you've done. And then you're going to say, I just put it there so it matches the application, you know. And remember too, a resume is not going to get you the job. A resume is going to get you the interview. Okay, it's a two-way process. And that is in the interview, right, Elisa? The interview is going to then be able to get you the offer. Okay.
Exactly.
So that's why you got to be honest. Okay.
Yes, the last thing too is, if you have a very well-developed LinkedIn profile, then we encourage you to list your LinkedIn URL on your resume as well, as that can be just another way for an employer to check out what you've done. And we often have LinkedIn workshops and so forth run through our department. So I encourage you to stay tuned for those on our website for future as well. They have amazing LinkedIn tutorials right within the platform. They have a help center where you can just say, create a profile, and it'll go step by step by step on how you would do that. So
Yeah,
that's something else, I encourage you to take advantage of. It's a great professional social networking site where you can
mhm,
connect with people in similar industries and
mhm.
stay connected to different opportunities.
Yeah, and don't overlook the importance of having a LinkedIn profile, because LinkedIn is for business. It's not a Facebook. It's not any other account. You should take it very seriously because you get a lot of connections from it. You'll see me, you'll see Elisa. So send us an invitation. I'll be happy to say, yes, I'll be part of your connection as well. So, because remember that when you do have a resume too, don't have more than 2 pages, maximum 2 pages. But if you can have it in 1 page, that's even good. Okay, so when you have a LinkedIn profile, you actually can have 5, 6 pages on it. It's actually an extension of your resume, but it's different. Okay, so that's why it's really important to not overlook it and take it as an next step further to develop maybe a good connection for a job. Let's talk about the don'ts now. Okay, now we do know, and then don't, so your resume will not end up in the shredder. Okay, we talked about before, do not use templates, right, Elisa?
That is right.
So do not begin with the phrase I. Okay, we don't, I or me, actually, we don't do
Yep.
that anymore.
Or
Okay.
mine.
Oh my, yes, exactly. Another thing that is really important is to not include personal information, age, kids, marital status, etc. Because that is a way, first of all, it's too much information, and that might be a way to actually being discriminated against, in a sense that, if you, let's say that I'm putting that I have 5 kids, or 20 kids, whatever that might be, that would be maybe a way for an employer to say, you have too many responsibilities. You're not going to be able to do the work that I need, in a sense. Not that they might say that, they might think of it, but it's just another tool. You don't want to provide more information that you need. Okay.
Another thing too is with, we talked about this a bit, but flashy graphics or colored paper, if you're not applying to a job, like you're not a graphic designer or something more in that creative space, then just keep it simple. Because, like I talked about before, if a computer is reviewing your resume, the more formatting and lines and different columns and things that you have in your resume, the computer might not even be able to scan it. And it will make it much, much harder to update when you have to go back, because if you're using a template or format, you have limited space, and then you might have to end up starting over anyway. So just stick to that, kind of blank Word document, left justify everything. It's very clean, easy to follow, and just makes it way easier for updating. Another thing too is, it's great to highlight your community involvement and the things that you're engaged within for volunteer work and so forth. But I would stay away from, mentioning any controversial activities or associations, possibly like your political affiliation, anything that might open you up for, you don't know who you're going to be interviewing with and what their thoughts are on certain things. So you want to keep it, I guess, in a sense, a little bit vanilla, where you are not going to offend anybody. So just think about that in what you're including.
A good way to think of it is like, let's say that you're a good fan of the Chicago Bears, football team. Do not put that on your resume, because you never know what's, we have, how Wisconsin, we're Green Bay Packers. So they might say, oh, okay, no, this guy is out of my league. I'm not going to hire, or this person, I just say. So make sure that, there's nothing controversial about your associations. Okay. We talked about exaggerating your experience. Do not do that. We talked about being honest. Well, this is a way to be honest, because it's going to come to haunt you when you do the interview. Okay. Do not falsify dates in any way, in a sense that you say that you probably worked at a place for maybe 1 year. Don't put 10. Okay. Or that you did a project. Don't put you did hundreds of them that you're not actually related to the job that we're applying for as well. So falsifying means that don't put the wrong date. I think it's maybe you missed out a date, or maybe a month. I don't think that's going to create a much of a difference, but be as accurate as you can. Okay. Another thing is that we don't do nowadays, include references, right, Elisa? Why shouldn't we include references anymore?
Yes, that's a great question. So back in the day, it used to be references furnished upon request. So that just takes up valuable real estate. If they want references, they're going to get references. And in this day and age, when you're doing the majority of online applications, they're going to ask for your references during that time that you're actually applying to the job. What I always recommend, and this pertains more to an interview, but have your references ready to go on a different page of paper, so that if you do have to go to an interview and they do ask for them, you have it ready to go and you can hand it over. But the real, the resume, you have very limited space, and it's all about selling yourself and how you can do the job. So it's really kind of doesn't add any value to add it. So that's something that's kind of no longer in trend.
Yeah, exactly. And the last thing that we have, I believe, for us is the next slide. Oh, well, we have some additional tips. We talked about stick to one page, but if you have a lot of experiences, no more than 2. Okay, remember, you might go back to 10 years, but also we talked about at the beginning is you're going to be putting experiences, put the experiences that actually related to the job that you're applying for. Right, Elisa?
Yes, definitely. And also, even if there's a job that, maybe you don't have a lot of work experience and you still need to put that job to show your work history, but you can still focus on those skills that are most relevant to the positions that you're applying to going forward. So, your customer service skills, your attention to detail, your organizational skills, something that would be valuable in most every other role, regardless of what, you're going for at that time.
And remember that one resume is not going to fit every single job. Okay. Exactly. You have to tailor your resume to the job that you're applying for. The hardest part is beginning, starting your resume from scratch. But once you have it, you have a good resume, you'll see how easy it is to change it, because you got to target it to the job that you're applying for. Okay. And it says there to approximately 10 years of work experience. When you have it, if you don't have to try to find, or remember a job that you might have done 10 years ago. Okay. It's not going to break the bank in a sense. So what they want to practically see that what is relevant, what are the skills that you are bringing today to the table that is going to make my companies, make that job, make that position, that you are applying for fits with what you already know.
Yes.
All right, so let's go to the next one, which is our office hours. I'm in downtown, room S101. So feel free to come from 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. and I'm happy to assist you when I'm available. Otherwise, we have other people that you can actually come to, and you don't necessarily have to come physically. You can actually do it via Zoom. And Elisa can talk about Oak Creek.
Yes, so Oak Creek, we are located, the Career Hub is located in room A101. 6, and Career Hub is located at Mequon in room A100. And just to note too, on Fridays, we are open from 8 until 4 rather than 6. But it can be really helpful if you are trying to get your resume reviewed to send an email ahead of time to careerhub@matc.edu. That way, whomever is reviewing it has the opportunity to really kind of dive into it and look at it in detail before you have that meeting. And another thing as well that can be helpful if you're emailing it is to let us know what types of jobs you're targeting, and then to also put it in a Microsoft Word document, because then we can provide feedback that way a little bit more easily. So in letting us know, of course, your program. So any of that background can help us when we're reviewing the resume. But of course, you're welcome to drop in, but sometimes it can be more productive if we have it ahead of time and have that opportunity to review it in advance.
And then also remember that a resume is something that changes over time. Okay, you're not going to have it and it's going to be that way forever. Okay, and it's going to take a little bit of time. You know, you're not going to have it right the first time, maybe the second time, but I'm sure by the 4th time you will have a good, outstanding resume that you will be getting so many calls and then having a hard time to decide where you want to go and work for. Okay, but we are here to, you know, happy to help you any which way that we can. You know, like I say, my name is Omar Barberena, and I'm one of the employment specialists at the downtown office. And with me, I have Alyssa.
Yep. Nice to meet you all. A couple last things too, Handshake. So this is something, and you'll find more information about this on our website as well, but Handshake is a great tool. So it's a career platform. For example, if an employer calls into our office and says, I have these great opportunities that I want to share with the MATC students, that's where we direct them to go to post their jobs and internships. So this platform is designed specifically for students and alumni that are, affiliated with a higher education institution. And pretty much the majority of higher education institutions across the United States, and all of them in Wisconsin, use the Handshake platform. So employers are very familiar with it. You can upload your resume once it's all updated and post that there. And that way employers can reach out to you directly as well if you opt in. So it's a really powerful tool to stay connected with employers, and we highly encourage you to take advantage of it. You'll also see many of our events that will come out through the Handshake platform and career fairs and everything like that. So please take a look at that. A couple last things. We've showed you our website before, but there it is again one more time for you. And then of course we have the fabulous Instagram page that Jasmine helps to maintain. And there are a lot of different current events and things that are coming up on there as well. So we highly encourage you to follow us on Instagram as well, so that you can stay in the know on everything that is Career Hub related and beyond.
Yes, well, it's been a pleasure talking to you. I hope every single one of you take advantage of these services that we have and send us your resume.
Yes. Take care.
Have a good day.